Hi boys and girls, hello. It's been a while since I've spoken to the Hyperspin community. A little bit of Commodore chat. So those of you that know me, as I know, don't get excited. I'm not going to be doing lots of guides and tutorial videos, but I do want to talk about the Amiga because there are quite a few people excited about it, and there's quite a lot of people who are confused about what's going on. So before I disappear again, just trying to help you guys out. So to do the Commodore Amiga, a system that I love very much, the emulator that we use on Android is called UAE for ARM, the beta version of it. You will find a link to download. I'll put it in the description to the Hyperspin Android part of the forum. There'll be a thread there and you'll find it to download UAE for ARM, because what a lot of guys are finding is it's stopped working all of a sudden. So the reason it stopped working is we thought the developer had stopped working on this. We were hoping for Amiga to come to Android, and that's looking like that could take some time. But the developer for UAE for ARM has come back, and he's worked in some bits from Amiga. But what's happened is this update has broken the emulator on the Shield TV, for now anyway. So I've let him know, and he said, well look, here's a link to download a previous version that was working. So hopefully he's going to fix it in time. But what you guys are going to have to do is go into your Google Play Store, down into your settings, and just stop auto updating your apps. Otherwise UAE for ARM will keep updating itself and breaking. Once we know that it's kosher and it's working fine, I'm sure we can re-enable auto updating. So just for now guys, if you're excited about the Amiga, disable that. Otherwise you're going to have to uninstall UAE for ARM and then point it to where your kickstarts are and where all your config files are. You don't need to be going through all that faff. Okay, so we'll go into Hyperspin. We've got the Amiga here. It really is in kind of a hiatus at the moment, guys. UAE for ARM isn't working great at the moment. Amiga we're waiting on. Amiga we're excited about. But it's all to do with the controls. So the Amiga CD32, that blue button on the pad, we can't bind that with UAE for ARM. So Amiga is kind of a big deal, unless by magic these controls get worked into UAE for ARM sometime soon, as he's trying to incorporate stuff from Amiga. I just don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. But you can see I've done Android lately. I've tried to keep myself busy. I did do a Doom wheel. You might find that under Doom Classics. Yeah, just because there's not a whole lot I can do with Amiga. But we'll show it off all the same to kind of explain what the crack is. So I did do all sorts of videos on this. Very convoluted journey. So what I have here is Workbench. I decided, as any Amiga aficionado should, to have this on the wheel. So this is, I don't want to make people angry, it's not Windows, but think of it as Windows before there was Windows. It is the Amiga operating system, graphical user interface. It's a really nice nostalgic nod. I like having it. So I didn't just have it for the nostalgic nod. I also found that the bootloader I used to play the WHD low games, the one that I installed for Workbench, was far more compatible than the one I was using to try and load games through the Hyperspin wheel. It's a completely different bootloader done by a guy called Horace the Spider. I believe it's part of the Ultimate Amiga group. Can't thank him enough for what he's doing, but just found that bootloader is quite fussy about some of the games. So quite a few would play, but every now and then we'd find stuff that wouldn't. It was really doing my head in, because it was working in Workbench, but it didn't work on the Hyperspin wheel. So what I'm going to do, you can see there's a games folder there. So what I've done, we'll back out and go into the emulator. Essentially, I have added a directory. I've added what most of us would call the ROMs folder. Amiga aficionados don't like that. ROMs should really be your kickstarts, BIOS files, but in general we tend to call ROMs to be games. So we've got A, B, C, D, on and on and on. I've divided all of that out because it helps refresh this window much faster. If I just dumped all of the games into one folder, it would take an age to get it populated. So that's why I did that. We can go inside here. This is probably going to take a while. Once the stopwatch goes, that will tell me it's populated, and we can go into these folders, and then we'll have an icon to click to load the games directly through Workbench. So this is, yeah, kind of cool. But yeah, it's not really how we want to be using Hyperspin. So I'm going to tap the back key just to get me into the emulator. So we'll just do a quick walkthrough. So system ROMs, this is what I was saying, the BIOS files, the kickstarts. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can get the Amiga Forever Essentials app off the Play Store. It's only a couple of pounds. If you want to do it officially, I bought it. But the reason I sourced the files elsewhere is that the Amiga Forever Essentials didn't do the CD32 kickstarts. So it's fine for doing the Amiga computers, but if you want to do the CD32 as well, you know, you're going to have to look elsewhere. So the emulator itself, if you install that app, Amiga Forever Essentials, it will just automatically detect those kickstarts. You don't really have to worry. If you're going to use them from somewhere else, point it to the folder that you have your kickstarts in, your BIOS files. I hope that makes sense. Configuration file. This is a folder where you're going to keep UAE files for every game that you have. We're going to make config files. Quite a few people don't have this system set up because it is a faff to do it. I did this all manually. It took me a long time, and I'm going to have to edit them all again in the future if I switch to Amiberry. And in fact, I kind of need to do it now, but we'll explain why in a bit. So we've got the hard drives section here. So DH0, I added a hard file. That is the Workbench image, I suppose we could call it. I'm not going to tell you how to make it. There's guides online. DH1 is me adding the directory, which is the games folder, which then has ABCD and all those WHD load games within there. So that's how that's done. We've got all of these settings to configure the Amiga we want. Getting the settings from Amiga A1200 probably makes the most sense. That's what I chose to do. So yeah, this isn't really the best way to be using Hyperspin, but nonetheless, it's a cool nod. But what we want to do is see the games, click the button, and for the games to load. So the way I was doing it with Horace's bootloader was very hit and miss. And what we discovered over time is if we use HDF versions of the games, then they work really well. So the compatibility is incredibly high. I don't think I've run into any problems yet, but keep in mind I do need to edit all of these. I've only done a few. The games that I really love, I really care about. I'm pressed for time. So what we'll do, we'll load Another World. We'll do Flashback as well. And we'll do Out of This World, which is the American version of Another World. I'll give it a bit of sound. Ransom, if you're watching, kindly note 4:3 aspect ratio. He gave me so much flack for stretching it to the screen. But there we go. The protection is whatever you want it to be. This has long been hacked. EDJI. God, I'm good. So we go. Right, I'll back out. Just so you guys can see the difference. So this is my config folder. You can see all of these are UAE files. So I've got Another World there. Not using a floppy drive. That would be for ADF versions of the games. To get every single Amiga game, not all of them are covered in WHD load. Some of them you would have to use ADF files. But I'm sticking to the WHD load collection. But what I've done is, thanks to Ransom, got hold of these HDF versions. So that's the WHD load game made into HDF files. So what's that all about? Well, it's really the bootloader and the game combined into one file, which just works. So that's why we just see DH0 there. I've added a hard file, just pointed it to the HDF file for Another World. So we've got display. 320 by 240 is a good shout for most games. You're going to have to tweak it here and there depending on the game. It's just one of these finicky things with the Amiga. Everything is slightly different. We've got my input there if you want to copy that. Joystick buttons, I like to emulate the mouse through the gamepad as well. But to be honest, having a keyboard and mouse set up with your Shield TV makes a lot of sense. A lot of games you're going to have to press F1 to start one player game, or maybe F2. It just, you can set B and Y to be buttons on the fly to change. So I could make this F1, go back into the game, press B, then come back out again and change it to something else. It kind of depends on the game. You can set these as you like per game, because each game is going to have a UAE file. So yeah, we've got save states, so we can save our game, quit out, go back to Hyperspin. We'll flick down the list a bit. Flashback being the spiritual successor to Another World. If I can find it without going too far. Lots of my friends love this game. I've got it for all sorts of systems emulated, but I really did love it on the Amiga. So we see UAE for arm kick in. Ransom's done such a good job on these conversions. I really can't thank him enough. I did offer to help him. He had some really strict conditions that he wanted to stick to for doing these conversions, and he's done it all himself, and you just have to tip your hat to the guy. He's an absolute machine. So this is why I'm doing Another World, because that was a problem game when I tried to use the WHD low version. Right, so again we can go to the hard drives, these virtual hard drives, DH0. I have just added the hard file, which is the flashback HDF file, which we saw played perfectly, absolutely fine. So I've got my ROM file there, the Kickstart 3.1 for the Amiga A1200. You see the amount of RAM I've got, 2 mega chip RAM, 8 mega fast. Chipset AGA, get the better graphics. Still compatible with ECS games, you can leave it as AGA. I've got the CPU settings there. So yeah, I mean, it's not really that difficult. Once you've made one UAE file, you can load it, change it to a different game, go to configurations, and then save it under a different name. But what you have to keep in mind, excuse me, for Hyperspin, is that these UAE files need to be named exactly as they are in the Hyperspin XML file, which is a database of all the games it expects to see. The XML I'm using is using the WHD load zip names. In UAE for ARM at the moment, when you try and use the keyboard, you can't use capital letters. So if you try to say flashback underscore version 3.2 whatever, you can't do the capital. Another thing you can't do is use special characters like a space. This is why the zip names work well, because they have the underscores. So that's another thing that has confused people. They'll use Arc browser, another front end which can launch Amiga games. They couldn't understand why the UAE files wouldn't load. Guarantee it's because they tried to use a space in their UAE file. You just unfortunately can't do that. So yeah, will come out. I think I said we'd do O, out of this world, which is really, oh, we've got Operation Stealth there. It's kind of cool game. This is another one which has two versions. So it's Operation Stealth to me, but it's actually a James Bond game to Americans that we should see, Out of This World. So again, this was a problem game if you used the WHD load version. When you take the zip file and extract it to a folder, Horace's bootloader just didn't play nice. So this has been changed to be a HDF file, and it's going to run no problems whatsoever. Now, I'm sorry to go on, guys, but I just want you guys to see that it does work. I might skip on to another game, Wolfchild, another favourite I have, which again will be HDF. So again, we're just going to do anything we want for protection. It's long been cracked. So some people might argue this, I've doubled the game up. It's not necessary to do this, but you know, I like to have the options. Excuse my cough. So I could use that same code again, EDJI, and it would load me into the first level. Just going to try and back out. Come on. Shame can't have a quit button. Walker, very cool game. I've changed this to be HDF as well. A lot of these games will still be the WHD load version. So some of these probably will play, some won't. So kind of at the moment, I'm in the process of, well, if it plays, it plays. If it doesn't play, I know I need to just edit that UAE file to point to the HDF version, which is now stored on the Shield TV. Thanks again to Ransom, can't thank him enough. So let's have a look for Wolfchild, because that is a very cool game. Wings I love as well. I did say Wolfchild. Here we go. Oh dear. It's the music for these games that really gets me. It's so old school, but so cool all at the same time. So yeah, you see that WHD load coming up at the start. That's just so you know it's really the bootloader and the WHD load game kind of converted and mixed together to this one file. So you might notice that black bar at the bottom. This would be a game where I could go into the display settings and adjust that vertical setting, try and nudge it down a little bit maybe, or adjust the resolution. I say every game can be slightly different. I don't want to play too much because I know the button tapping gets annoying. But I think we'll leave it there, guys. God knows how long I've been going on for. Hopefully it does help you guys out. As I say, I'm not going to be doing lots of videos, tutorials anymore. I sadly just don't have the time. But I know there's lots of guys excited about the Amiga, and they will be keeping their eye on it and looking to do a guide to help you guys out once we really know what the best way forward is going to be. We want to use AmiBerry, but you know, it could be UAE for ARM. We'll just have to see what the developer does in the future. So have a great day, guys. Have a great evening, whatever it is you're doing. Thanks for your time, and yeah, I'll see you whenever I might see you next. Ciao for now.